Welcome to Short Movie Channel. The movie starts with a man named Overgaard, who is sitting alone in an icy region in the North Pole. We learn that he was flying over this area, but unfortunately, his plane broke down, and he was forced to make an emergency landing. Since then, he has been trying to save himself, suffering from the extreme cold. All he can do is stay where he is, trying to adapt until someone happens to see him and rescue him. We see Overgaard carving into the snow to create a distress signal, hoping any passing plane will see it. After that, he goes fishing, which becomes the only source of food he can live on in this place. He then goes to the plane he has been living in since it crashed, begins to eat, and is very sad because he doesn't know if he will ever return to his normal life or if he will die alone in this place. After finishing his meal, he prepares himself, takes a sensor device, and climbs a nearby hill to try sending distress signals to any nearby electronic device. However, no one picks up his signal. He's not surprised, though, because this isn't the first time his attempts have failed. Despite that, he doesn't feel hopeless. Every day, he holds on to any hope and continues sending signals until night falls, and then he returns to his plane to rest. Here, the extent of his exhaustion and the wounds on his legs from the severe cold are visible. The next day, he is surprised to find polar bear tracks in the snow, and he becomes very scared. He quickly runs back to his plane and locks it securely from the inside, terrified, because if the bear is still around and sees him, it won't leave him alone until he becomes its next meal. Days pass, and nothing new happens in Overgaard's life. He continues doing the same things every day. One day, while Overgaard is sitting and sending signals with his sensor device, night begins to set in, and the weather starts to worsen with stronger winds in the area. He decides to take his device and head back to the plane, but before he does, he notices that the device has turned green, which means someone is nearby. He feels a surge of happiness, and climbs the hill to see if there's anyone close. Sure enough, he spots a helicopter flying through the area. He gets excited, runs quickly to grab a flare from his plane, and lights it in the air to get the attention of the people on the helicopter so they can come and help him. He continues to wave at the helicopter until the people inside spot him. At that point, Overgaard is extremely happy because he finally thinks he will escape this place. But unfortunately, he doesn't know that his joy will not last. The helicopter can't fly in this weather, and it crashes right in front of him. Overgaard rushes toward the wrecked helicopter, trying to save whoever's inside. When he reaches it, he finds that the pilot has died, but the co-pilot is still alive, though unconscious and injured. He searches the plane for anything that could help her and eventually finds a first aid kit. He starts treating her wounds and stays by her side through the night. The next day, he wakes up and goes to check on her. He learns her name is Maria. After confirming she is still alive, he looks for anything useful in the wreckage of their helicopter. He finds a map, flares, and food. He takes everything and then goes to get a sled. He places Maria on the sled and starts pulling her toward the plane. Before he leaves, he writes down the location of their plane on the helicopter, so if anyone finds the wreckage, they'll know where to look. He continues pulling Maria on the sled until they reach the plane. When they arrive, Overgaard checks her injuries, and after a while, Maria wakes up. Overgaard begins to explain what happened, telling her that she and the pilot had crashed and that unfortunately, the pilot didn't make it. When Maria hears this, she is deeply saddened and starts crying. Overgaard tries to comfort her and helps her relax. He then returns to the helicopter to search for anything else that could help them. He finds a lighter and an old stove-like item. He takes them with him and finds a picture of Maria with the pilot, and they are also with a young girl. Overgaard feels deeply moved, and Maria collapses when she learns that the pilot, who was her husband, has died. After that, he returns the plane and tends to Maria's injury to prevent the situation from getting worse. Then, he goes to start a fire and sits by it, trying to warm up a little because the weather is extremely cold. Night comes, and he uses the map he has to try and determine his location. He successfully figures out where he is and what's the nearest thing to him. Then, he goes fishing, as usual, and prepares food for himself and Maria. However, he notices that her condition is worsening, and if she stays in this condition, she will die soon. So, he starts thinking of a way to save her. The next day, he comes up with a dangerous idea and decides to take Maria to a shelter he saw on the map, hoping to save her and his own life. This decision is strange because he doesn't know the dangers he'll face on this journey. Plus, Maria is very sick and unable to move, so he will have to drag her on a sled. But despite all that, he decides to give it a try, taking himself and Maria on a dangerous journey. Overgaard begins preparing all the necessary supplies for the trip. After finishing the preparations, he puts Maria on the sled and before leaving, writes on the plane that there are 2 people alive on the way to the shelter. Then, he takes Maria, and their journey begins. He drags her along until night starts falling, and he has to stop at a spot and dig a cave so they can sleep in it. He successfully makes an ice cave, and they sleep there. The next day, Overgaard continues his journey, dragging Maria on the sled. He stops occasionally to rest and check on her. As they reach a high hill full of rocks, he gets frustrated because it will be very difficult to pull Maria up the hill. He looks at the map to see if there's another path, and indeed, he finds another way, but it will take a lot longer and make the task even harder. Nonetheless, he decides to take the longer route, and when night falls again, he finds another cave. He decides to rest there, and once inside the cave, he prepares the shelter, eats, and tries to help Maria. But her condition worsens significantly, and it looks like she won't survive. He becomes very upset about this, and suddenly, he finds a polar bear trying to enter the cave after smelling the food Overgaard had prepared. Overgaard panics and quickly grabs a flare, lighting it at the entrance of the cave to scare the bear away. The bear is frightened and leaves the cave. Overgaard and Maria barely escape, but he's overwhelmed with emotion and starts crying from all the pressures and disasters he's facing. The next day, he continues the journey with Maria, but that day, the winds are very strong, and Overgaard can't drag her any further. He has no choice but to take her off the sled and place it in front of them to protect them from the wind. They remain in that position all day, unable to continue their journey. The next day, Overgaard resumes pulling Maria and continues their journey. When he stops to rest, he checks on her, but to his shock, he finds out that Maria has passed away. He's devastated, and in a moment of grief, he leaves her body behind and continues the journey alone, hoping to save himself. While walking, he suddenly falls into a hole, losing consciousness. When he wakes up, he finds himself stuck in a cave, with his leg trapped under the snow. He tries to free himself but can't, and begins feeling that everything he had been doing was pointless, thinking that he was meant to die alone in that place. Just as he's about to lose hope, he decides to try again with all his strength. He manages to free his leg, but it's severely injured, making it difficult for him to continue on foot. He decides to go back and get the sled from Maria's body to use it. But to his surprise, when he returns, he finds that Maria is still alive. She was just unconscious. Overgaard feels guilty for what he did, thinking he could have left her to die in that place. He apologizes to her and promises that he will help her and take her to safety. Overgaard pushes himself even harder, dragging Maria despite his injured legs. It's incredibly difficult, so he decides to discard some of the supplies to lighten the load. As they continue their journey, by coincidence, they see a helicopter. However, at that point, he's completely exhausted, barely able to move. He refuses to waste this last opportunity and lights a flare, yelling and waving it, hoping that someone in the helicopter will see them. Unfortunately, no one notices. Despite this, he doesn't give up and tries using his jacket to signal. But still, no one sees them, and the helicopter flies off into the distance. At this point, Overgaard loses all hope, lays down beside Maria, holds her hand, and apologizes to her for not being able to save her and keep his promise. He feels sure that this is the end for both of them. However, the people in the helicopter do see them, and they turn the helicopter around to rescue them after all the suffering they've been through, especially Overgaard, who challenged the impossible just to save someone he didn't even know from death. He could have left her to die alone and saved himself, and no one would have known. The movie ends like that. I look forward to your thoughts on the film in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.